Hi, I'm Dan Krutka. Educational technology, often shortened to EdTech, is everywhere in schools. Many school districts employ educational technology professionals with jobs like digital learning coordinator or educational technology specialist. Teachers are expected to integrate EdTech in their classrooms and maybe even teach in one-to-one classes where every student has a laptop or a tablet, and students are even called digital natives. Don't use that term, there's some problems with it. And these students are expected to code, compute, and create. Teacher candidates have to even attend classes with boring college professors like me who are supposed to teach them how to use digital tools in education. But before we go further, I think we need to answer a basic question about EdTech. What makes technology educational? Let's start by defining each term. First, technology. This is harder than it may seem. Just like the apps on our smartphones, the word technology has been periodically updated. The term is rooted in Greek and Latin and has historically conveyed the techniques or methods that technicians developed to practice their craft. It's kind of similar to how computers used to refer to people like Katherine Johnson, who computed flight trajectories for NASA as seen in the film Hidden Figures. Today, technology is more associated with tools, machinery, and computers. This shift increased as the Industrial Revolution resulted in a shift from hand production methods to machines and eventually factory production. Therefore, today, most people tend to think of technology as inventions separate from humans. This is kind of similar to how ideas used to be intimately associated with humans who shared them. But the invention of the printing press and the distribution of books allowed for ideas to exist separate from the person who conveyed them. It is worth noting that not all people view inventions as progress. Most notably, a group of 19th century English textile workers known as the Luddites smashed textile machinery because manufacturers used machines in what they called a fraudulent and deceitful manner to get around their standard labor practices at the time. The Luddites feared that their craft and livelihoods were harmed by the ways these technologies were being put to use. So today, the term Luddite is often used as either an insult for people who don't want or aren't skilled enough to use new technologies, or it's used as a term of pride by people who live without, for example, smartphones. However, a more accurate contemporary comparison might be the Amazon workers in Bessemer, Alabama, who tried to unionize to fight against invasive technologies and abusive working conditions. Luddites are not anti-technology, they're anti-exploitation. So how do we ensure that technologies do no harm? Okay, back to defining technology. People, especially in education, have a tendency to discuss technology only in terms of those new, shiny, emerging technologies that are new hardware like tablets or computers or software like apps or websites or learning management systems. Even though we're used to them and they seem natural, old technologies are technologies too. Why are we hating on chalkboards and desks? In 1827, it was said of chalkboards, "It is surprising and delightful to see the interest which it kindles in even the dullest scholar. By rousing the curiosity and holding the attention beyond all other means, it would almost completely banish the weariness which makes a schoolhouse a place hated to so many children, and that listlessness and idleness which renders that time spent there so often worse than lost." Think about how desks and pencils and buildings have all impacted education in schools. In the end, it's almost easier to identify what technologies are not. They're not the natural things of the world. But I think we can agree with a general definition of technologies as the knowledge and instruments that humans use to accomplish the purposes of life. Building on that definition, Nicholas Carr categorized technologies in terms of how they amplify our physical or intellectual abilities to accomplish those purposes of life. So first, he said technologies can increase physical attributes. For example, the plow can increase strength, the car can increase speed, or a shield can increase resistance. Second, technologies can enhance senses. For example, the microscope or telescope can increase vision, and the microphone can increase sound. Third, technologies can reshape nature. For example, a reservoir can prevent floods and provide water, and birth control can reduce unwanted pregnancies. 4, technologies can increase intellect. For example, a clock can change the way people conceive of time and organize their day. So think of technologies in your life. How do they change you? A good way to understand the impact of technologies on your life is to consider what would change if I no longer had a car or watches or clocks or air conditioning. If we are much more than we think products of our technology, similarly, our teaching is often much more a product of our technologies than we might think. Okay, so you thought technology was hard to define. Now let's try to define educational. There's a lot of debate on that. Many people use the term educational simply for things that students do in schools. But I'm going to turn to educational philosopher John Dewey, who argued in 1938 that experiences both in and out of school can be more or less educational or miseducational. As you can see in the image, Dewey asserted that educational, well, he actually used the term educative. It's kind of an old-timey term. But he said educational experiences must have continuity by building off our prior experiences and leaving us wanting to continue them into the future. For example, if a teacher starts a lesson and students are lost right away, then there's a lack of continuity with their prior experiences. If a student completes a class, then maybe they even get an A or get a 5 on an AP test, but they never want to study that subject again, there's a lack of continuity into their future. An educational experience requires continuity from the past and into the future. Also, educational experiences must be attentive to external and internal factors. Educational experiences must also connect to and address the external factors of our larger social world. Is the curriculum relevant to the community, to students' lives? Moreover, educational experiences require experiences that attend to students' development, their dispositions, and their feelings. Educators must ensure students feel supported, seen, and valued, and capable. In other words, an educational experience lasts across time and is meaningful to students and society. Too often, school can be miseducational, particularly if students' social concerns or their linguistic, cultural, or racial selves are not represented in the curriculum. Okay, so let's bring these definitions together, both educational and technology, and be more specific about what we mean by educational technology. I propose a broad definition of educational technology that includes educational experiences with new and old technologies, that connects with our prior experiences, sustains future interest, responds to individual and cultural experiences, and concerns meaningful topics. By this definition, a desk could be an educational technology if it is used in ways that encourage meaningful learning experiences. But a computer, for example, on the other hand, could be a miseducational technology if it just results in a student being cyberbullied during class. This definition of educational technology takes students, technologies, and their real relationships into account. And you, as an educator, will have to figure out when technology helps produce educative or educational experiences for students. In assigning meaning to educational technology, I should also point out the important role that metaphors play in our understanding of EdTech. Emerging EdTech gadgets and platforms are often referred to as tools or digital tools, but they are not literally tools, of course. That's a metaphor. Metaphors help humans make meaning by taking an idea we understand and mapping it onto an area which we understand less. Therefore, we come to understand new and unfamiliar concepts in terms of old and familiar ones. However, metaphors can limit how we understand a new concept too. Humans have been using tools since, well, sticks, right? Sticks. That's like the first tools. Elephants use sticks too, right? Sometimes to scratch themselves. But I know sticks isn't a time period, so I shouldn't say since sticks, but it should be, right? The sticks era. Kind of sounds good. I don't know. Maybe not. Anyway, the earliest tools were rather simple and they helped humans achieve pretty specific tasks. The benefits were rather obvious and the use of the tools was often limited to the task. Even though it is fair to point out that simple tools could profoundly reshape people's lives. So therefore, when people think of EdTech as digital tools, they tend to think of the technology's affordances or what it allows the user to do. However, as tools become more complex, tools can have more varied, collateral, and disproportionate effects. Therefore, environmental or ecological metaphors may be more helpful in thinking about ed tech because they can help us think about the complex relationships between technologies, students, and teachers. Thinking of technologies as environments can help us see not just how we use technologies, but how sometimes they use us. For example, if we think of the car as an environment, we start to see how cars have changed us. Throughout history, people in cities have lived in walkable neighborhoods that met their needs. However, cars needed space to drive and park, and we gradually reshaped society to meet the needs of cars. Now, instead of walking to your neighborhood family-owned pharmacy, many people are forced to drive to a corporate franchise miles away. American cities have sprawled out. Now, many people can't even imagine a life without cars. We're car people as much as we are people who use cars. We think of transportation in our lives through the lens of car transportation. Similarly, the invention of school desks created a new environment where learning is more defined by sitting still. Schools with internet access nudges educators toward an environment of information and maybe away from knowledge, much less wisdom. Tablet computers like Chromebooks or iPads created an environment whereby class experiences may involve less group interaction and discussion as students each have their own screen with which to interact. Now, the effects of technologies, especially contemporary ones that create online platforms, are neither simple nor singular. The benefits of an environmental metaphor are not that it provides easy answers, but it encourages more holistic and critical thinking about the varied effects of EdTech. Finally, it is important to always remember that technologies are often created by companies that seek profits. Many companies like Google, for example, make money off extracting our digital data and then using it to try to sell us things based on our online behavior. We should interrogate the corporate interest behind all technologies we use in and out of schools. Some of these technologies we use in schools were created specifically for young people or students, but other technologies are often created for more general audiences and then they're used in schools. That's why we should be wary with a platform like YouTube that has a long history of recommending conspiracy theory videos or other problematic content. Also, we got to remember that our societies are deeply biased. Racism, sexism, ableism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, ageism, linguistic discrimination, so many other bigotries are often amplified online where people type whatever they want on their keyboards. Sometimes these technologies and platforms can actually recommend racist or sexist search results. They can amplify conspiracy theory posts, like I mentioned, or they can be designed in a way that is discriminatory. Educators should take critical approaches about both the companies, their platforms or products, and society when using technologies. To summarize, technologies are not just the newest tools we use for education. New and old technologies create environments that interact with students and society for experiences that can be either educational or miseducational from one student to the next. In fact, maybe the most important EdTech lesson you can learn is that it is the educator's job to figure out which is which. Thanks for watching.